Sight of the marketplace gave me a heady feeling. There were so many people, some moving, some sitting, others squatting, laughing, talking, or haggling. None was quiet, voices everywhere and in every conceivable shriek and bellow. A large building was standing in the center, and from it people spilled into the courtyard. Carts were drawn up in one place, in another a few trucks, while donkeys and mules were hitched along fences and under trees, the jack donkeys braying challenges for fights which they could not have. The air scented with stalls of fresh bread warm out of the ovens. Before we unloaded the cart, I hitched my goats to a fence, and while Mrs. Hilcher sold, Donna Ray and I walked around in search of the livestock section. We passed the butchers in blood-stained aprons, dressing meat and selling it in slabs to noisy women who fought their way to the wickets. There was an adjacent section where they handled tripe, not the best smelling of places, so we moved on to the clothes vending department, where Donna Ray spent a considerable time looking lovingly at the dresses and blouses. I bought her a snowball, really shaved ice reddened and sweetened by syrup, and then we came to the livestock section. We circled back to get the goat kids. Father had not yet arrived. Mrs. Hilcher's hands were busy selling. Buyers weighed the cabbages first in their hands, then on the scale. They felt the tomatoes. "Don't squeeze them," Mrs. Hilcher barked in market tones. Donna Ray helped her. I too got into the act, but as soon as business slackened, I unhitched the goats. Father had told me what my goats were worth, so I led them to the livestock market. Donna Ray decided to come along. We ran into people we knew and got some strange stares. Son Johnson's boy with goats at the market? And with that church mouse poor girl tagging along? My God, what was this with status and money? I joined the men in the stockades, a noisy place, human and animal voices. "What you giving for this hoss? Do I get 7 pounds? Do I ear 7? A mangy horse that seemed to have had every joint in its bones dislodged. His ribs showed, all of them. He seemed to have been broken and put back together again. The owner was no less mangy than the horse, and was cursed with a toothless mouth, rag-tag beard, and pig-little eyes which scanned the crowd. "Do I get 6 then? Do I ear 6? This horse has good blood, family old race horses. Who's paying 5 for him?" Nobody seemed interested, and why should they be? He was coming down with his price instead of going up. My goats were having attention from the very start. Men were looking at them, walking around them. One man who was accompanied by a small boy seemed the most interested. He probably was planning to start a herd with them for his little boy. I had a he and a she, their coats shiny, the she brown. The he was black and white and had a military gait. Healthy starters. "Who's giving 50 shillings for this he-goat?" I said suddenly, copying the tactics of the unsuccessful auctioneer. "Do I hear 50? 3 months old, and look at him," I said. "Stands 2 feet tall already, and as rambunctious as ever. Pure spirit, that's him. He'll sire a herd. 50? Do I hear 50? Behind me, Donna Ray snickered. In front of me were surprised faces, surprised but pleased. There is never anything better for business than the unexpected. I, the only boy auctioneer. Nobody had expected this of me. I, they thought, would have cringed in a corner looking for buyers. I had surprised them, and in doing so, I had their attention. The small boy seemed satisfied, for he was digging his father in the ribs and pointing at my goats, nay, the 2 of them. Just as I had thought, he wanted to start a herd. "The she's 45, I said. "Good strain as the he, 95 shillings, and take them away." 95, the father of the boy said, holding up his hand and looking around for competitors, but hoping there wouldn't be any. But he had one, an older man, the grandfather type. I wondered what he wanted with goats, but maybe he had a grandson back at home. But what did I care? He had money, and his magic words were 100 shillings, 5 pounds exact. Exactly, 105, the man with the toddler said. Do I hear 110? I said. I had no idea it would be so much fun. Father didn't tell me. He said they'd snap them up. That was all he had said. He didn't mention the auction bid. Do I hear 110? The sun was hot. I was sweating. Donna Ray was not snickering now. She liked it too, perhaps even admired me. 105, the man and boy team said stubbornly. The old man dug furiously into his pockets, but he was short some money. His face died beyond his seeming 65. He said not another word, or if he did, he said it in his teeth. He left in a rather bony walk. The other gentleman approached me, and money and goats exchanged hands. A satisfied buyer, the small boy handled first the she and then the he. Then there was laughter around, admiring laughter, and Donna Ray's eyes were swimming with something that hadn't been there before. How did I do? I asked as we walked away. There's no word for it, she said. You were so funny. Is that all I was? No, silly. I mean, you were very good, of course. That's sweet of you, I said. Funny. I made more than I had even bargained for. She just looked at me in the face. Oh, my God, you're fabulous look. Two men I knew were talking. What a way to go, eh, Lobo? Never thought I'd seen the day when Son Johnson would come to this. Is boy selling goats in the market? The wife, I mean the ex-wife, must have a bleeding art. She got out just in time. Why she not take our boy? Lobo didn't speak, but his pity said it for him. He and his pity could go to the dickens. I looked at Donna Ray. Father's right, you know. She waited. He told me last night that a horse shouldn't be too proud to carry its own grass. I guess it was hard coming here to do this, but it was fun. And after all, Donna Ray, what's the difference if the butcher had come to my house or to my field and I had sold them there? The fact is, I would have sold them just as I did a while ago. Sell is the thing, isn't it? The place is immaterial. She only put her hand in mine. Hers was damp as mine was. It felt good. Both of them together felt mighty good. I felt so prosperous and heady, too. We went back to the Hilcher open-air stall. Father was there. The food stock was down to mere dribblings. All the best items had been sold. Mrs. Hilcher looked tired. Father was jubilant at my windfall, but when Donna Ray told him of my auctioneering, he laughed. Braid is the correct word. Father was knowing. By Mrs. Hilcher's darting eyes and nervous movements, although she was putting on a great show otherwise with some flash-in-the-pan smiles, he knew that she worried about her fresh fish, that it might be all sold by the time she managed to get away. He said, "Look here, Betty, I'll take over now while you go and do some shopping of your own." "You will?" she said with sparks in her mouth. "You don't mind?" She got quickly to her feet but sat down again. "Oh, no, I'll finish the job." "No, let me." Father pulled her to her feet with little boy giggles and began to untie the apron from her waist. She giggled in kind like a girl. It was so boy and girl-like, almost romantic, but I didn't like it. With all my previous platitudes about what's money and what's prestige, I still did not want Father to expose himself to any belittling talk and innuendos. I didn't want him to sell. If we had come this far without him, why not go all the way? It was okay for me, but not for him, I said. "Let me, Father. Here." Before he could tie the money-laden apron around his waist, I took it and hitched it on Donna Ray's. "Go and have a drink of rum," I said. "A what?" he said, astonished. I was sorry that I had said that. It was right off the bat, but I could mend the blooper. I said, "A drink of whatever you like, sir. Here, it's on me this time." I held out 2 shillings of my own money, as though he were scanning an unusual specimen. He looked at the money in my palm, then glancing at me, he laughed. We all laughed. He took it, though. He didn't care to let a boy buy him something like a drink, anything for that matter, but neither was he the one to hurt a boy's feelings, and his own son's. He took it, and he was walking away. He took He took it and he was walking away when he came back. You know, Remy, I think I'll have that rum. Cheers, I said. He walked away, flinging the coin up again and again, catching it glinting in midair until he penetrated the shifting crowd and it was no longer safe for him to indulge himself. His broad back disappeared. I liked the way he was wearing his straw hat way back on his nape. It made him seem so casual, a man 45 who looked no more than 35, my father's son Johnson. I bought Donna Ray and me a cooling drink of foamy stuff the vendor called tongue Lickout, but which was really a kind of milkshake, and we sat back, well back on the pebbly ground, leaning against a tree and sipping it, silky through the straws. Do you like father? I said to her. Very much. Do you like me? Why? She was even frightened. I guess it was a silly, unfair question anyway. Never mind, I said and passed on to new business. I really like the way your mom and my father are getting along. There's no disagreement between them. It's lovely, don't you think? She said. Why did you say never mind? Oh, no good reason, I said. I wonder how Max is doing back there. She didn't say anything. Couldn't say that I could blame her. I really enjoy this though, you know. I mean this rough and tough bit. I mean there was a time when I couldn't. Ma prevented me from going barefooted and from playing with certain boys who were undesirables to her, but who, by the way, knew where the best birds were feeding and could lead you to the most prolific fishing holes. It was so foolish because they had all the fun and I had none or too little. They chopped fish at nights in the river if they wanted to, and played all sorts of exciting games, and attended wakes in the village and eat us as well, while I had to go to bed. Resting, I sucked down some tongue Lickout, alias milkshake or resting, I sucked down some tongue Lickout, alias rest. Resting, I sucked down some tongue Lickout, alias milkshake or vice versa, then went on. I really wish we didn't have to break apart like this though, but I guess Ma and Father just couldn't have made it together anyway, even if he had been successful. I guess they are what you call, do you know a word called incompatible? Donna Ray said, yes, I guess that's what it is. I like Ma too, you know, and Arlene and Brad. I miss them all, but what other choice did I have? I looked at her. You think I did right? She looked at me without answering. You see, Father is quite an earthy type. He is a short sleeve, not a long sleeve man. Ma is a gown type. Father is loose in his ways, but Ma is correct. Father is often a spendthrift. Ma never gets that way. Do you know that she wanted him to run for parochial elections and all that? Father, not father, yet she meant good. But you can't push a man into something that he doesn't like. Ma liked the social world, having friends who liked to drink those 4 o'clock teas, whereas father always bolted. You see what I'm getting at? Two people like that are capable to love each other, just as how dry peas love the fire, but they can't exist in the same pod. One pushes, the other bolts. Their love is there, it is a fact, but there's no fence to keep the thing in and controlled. Their divorce was an accident, a stupid dare that became a blooming fact. Ma was mad at father for his failures recently, and she separated just to scare him into getting himself back together. Then, when that didn't work, she went one step farther and got the divorce. After that, she couldn't turn back. So there it was, a divorce and the loss of Robin Hill. I mean, I stuck with father because all of us couldn't just leave him like that. And we came to River Bottom because we couldn't live at Robin Hill as squatters. Jake would have liked that. How he would have liked that. It's rough down there in the River Bottom, but well, it's a start. You know, Donna Ray, I think father can make it and is going to make it. He's going to work himself up again. He's a good man, you know. But I let my voice drop. He's too giddy. Giddy? You know what I mean. Too easy. So folks take advantage of him. He's ready to listen to every cock and bull petition and to help out every Joe Blow. Not me, though. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to put every penny to good use. You want to know what I'm going to do with some of this money from the goats? I asked, touching my pockets. I'm going to invest it wisely. I've been thinking, why don't I buy me a pet monkey? She sucked the last of the drink from the froth-stained glass. So you see, she said, letting go for air, you're just like your father. What? Just that, you're giddy too, as you call it, spending your money on foolish things like that. A pet monkey, of all things? What? But what else could I have said? For one, she was right, and two, it was the way in which she said it, like Ma would have, like a wife would. Why did you say never mind? She asked again. Oh, that, I said, and cleared my throat for no other reason but to win me some time. Isn't there a lot of people here today? I asked. You're dodging the question, Remy. And then it happened. They all came along. Ma and Arlene behind Jake. Brad was followed by the chauffeur, Lorne Bakersfield. The glass slipped from my hand. Ma here with, of all persons, Jake Hibbertson? I could also feel Donna Ray's fear thick around me, fear that she had been found sitting so close to me. Arlene was the first to spot me. Look, Ma, she pointed, her eyes horrified. Remy! Where? Ma said, incredulous, and when she followed Arlene's stabbing finger and saw me, her eyes blazed, just blazed, and then they were more than angry. She stepped over. What are you doing here? Get off that ground, you worthless! I was too frightened not to have jumped to my feet in reflex, jingling money in the process. She saw the remaining vegetables and knew. You shameless thing, just like your father. Oh, Remy. She looked scornfully at Donna Ray. And who's this girl you're with? Donna Ray was hardly breathing. Ma well knew Donna Ray. At school, she had Donna Ray for history. Arlene was embarrassed. Brad was digging his toes into the pebbles. Where's your father? Ma snapped. Out somewhere, ma'am. That man! She stamped her foot and grunted. Doing this to you, dragging you down like this. I didn't think that Merton would sink this far. I won't let him do this to you another minute, Remy. I won't. Like an automatic critic, Jake was shaking his head in disbelief. I didn't like the scene one way or the other. Come along, Jake said, taking Ma. Come along, Jake said, taking Ma's arm. Take her arm? My God! There's only one thing to be done, she said resolutely. I'll take Remy away from him. I'll take him to the court, she raved, still looking back as Jake led her away. I'll fight for him, for my son. Anxious to learn, people were gathering around. Father came back. He saw them. He stopped, absorbed the pain, and adjusted fast. He came forward slowly. Coming back, Ma just about attacked him right there in the market. With heaving bosom, she stopped just short, but she didn't say anything to him. That, I gathered, was respect. Maybe even some love, for their eyes remained together for a long time, and I thought I spotted some love in hers. They softened. How do you see it? With all her anger, she refrained from venting it on Father. Alone with me, she had let him have it, but now that Father was here, the confrontation was only one of eyes. I must say that was good of her. Very decent indeed, not to have belittled Father in public. Hello, Jake, Father said, smiling. Jake nodded, but he turned away, looking up in the sky to assess the cloud patterns, I assumed. But he ought to have felt embarrassment. After all, what was he doing here with another man's wife, even though she was an ex-wife? Hello, Debbie, he said meaningfully to Ma, but she turned away. You see, Ma had expected father to have melted, to have blanched in this predicament, but he hadn't, and she could not stand his unshakable imperturbability. Father nonchalantly turned to Arlene with outstretched hands, but my sister walked off and around Ma, and so did Brad when it was his time to be received by father. You could see that despite this setback, father was in jocund mood. His eyes were dancing, not darting. He straightened up from having reached for my brother and sister. "Well," was all he said. "Merton," Ma said, stumping her foot, "you surprised me." With his axe-shaped face tilted towards the skyline, Jake hurried them away. For a long time, father stood akimbo, looking at the pebbles at his feet. Then he looked at me and said, "Well, son, the gauntlet's out. Seems we've got something coming." He went away again. I noticed how people looked at him. I was so sorry that it had happened. About 5 minutes passed before either Donna Ray or I said anything, and what I said was not said to her. I mumbled, "Imagine Ma and Jake here in town together." Without malice of any kind, Donna Ray said, "So, your pa and my mom are here too." "What?" I snapped. It would take a girl to undermine a boy's argument like that, but it was true. True, true, true. I guess women are indeed more realist than men are. The simple way in which Donna Ray had said it, and it was true. Only it was more than true. I got the impression that Jake Hibbertson was not yet finished with father. It was far too upsetting for me, so I went to water the mule.